So, reading from Biography of Srila Prabhupada. This chapter is entitled Planting the Seed. Although he was engaging the boys in cooking and typing, Prabhupada was not doing any less himself. Thank you. Thanks. Rather, for every sincere soul who came forward to ask for service, 100 came who wanted not to serve but to challenge. Speaking sometimes shouting and pounding his fists, Prabhupada defended Krishna against the Mayavite philosophy. This was also his service to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He had not come to America to retire, so with the passing of each new day came yet another confirmation that his work and his followers and his challengers would only increase. How much he could do was up to Krishna. I'm an old man, he said. I may go away at any moment, but if he were to go away now, certainly Krishna consciousness would also go away, because the Krishna consciousness society was nothing but him. His figure leading the chanting, while his head moved back and forth in small motions of ecstasy. His figure walking in and out of the temple to the courtyard or into the apartment. His person sitting down smilingly to discuss philosophy by the hour. He was the sole bearer and maintainer of the small, fragile, controlled atmosphere of Krishna consciousness on New York's Lower East Side. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 2, text number 36 and 37. Vimuchyatam imam bandham avidya kama karmajam sarvabhuta sukhrishchanto maitra karuna atmavan mokshaye prastam atmanam. It's two verses. Mokshaye grastam atmanam yoshinmayatma mayaya vikridito yayaivaham kridam riga ivadama vimuchyatam imam bandham avidya kama karmajam sarvabhuta sukhrichanto maitra karuna atmavan mokshaye gastam atmanam yoshinmayatma mayaya vikridito yayaivaham kridam riga ivadmaha. Vimuchyatam bandham kamajam Sarvabhuta Suhrichchanto Mitra Karuna Atmavan Moche Grastamatmamam Yoshin Mayatma Mayaya Vikridito Yaivaham Kridam Ga Ivadama Vimuchyatam Mimam Bandam Avidya Kama Karmajam Sarvabhuta Suhrichyanto Maita Karuna Atmavan Moche Grastamatmanam Yoshin Mayatma Mayaya Vikridito Yaivaham Kridam Ga Ivadama Vimuchyatam Imam Bandam Avidya Kama Karmajam Sarvabhuta Sukhichanto Maitra Karuna Admavan Moche Gratam Admanam Yoshin Mayatma Mayaya Vigridito Yayaivaham Kridamiga Ivadama. Vimuchyatam Imam Bandam Avidya Kama Karmajam Sarvabhuta Sukhichanto Mitra Karuna Atmavan Moche Grastam Atmanam Yoshin Mayatma Mayaya Vikridito Yayaivaham Kridamigai Vimuchya, having become free from that this bondage, avidya due to ignorance, kama due to lusty desire, karmajam caused by activities, sarva bhuta of all living entities, suhrit friend, shanta very peaceful, maitra friendly, karuna merciful, atmavan self-realized, moche I shall disentangle, grastam engaged, atmanam my soul, yoshita maya in form of woman, atmamaya by the illusory energy of the Lord, vikridita played with, yaya by which, eva certainly, aham I, krida mriga controlled animal, iva like, adhama so fallen. Translation of purport by His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Because of identifying oneself with the body, one is subjected to desires for sense gratification, and thus one engages in many different types of pious and impious action. This is what constitutes material bondage. Now, I shall disentangle myself from my material bondage, which has been caused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead's illusory energy in the form of a woman. Being a most fallen soul, I was victimized by the illusory energy and have become like a dancing dog led around by a woman's hand. Now, I shall give up all lusty desires and free myself from disillusion. I shall become a merciful, well-wishing friend to all living entities and always absorb myself in Krishna consciousness. Purport. This should be the standard of determination for all Krishna conscious persons. A Krishna conscious person should free himself from the clutches of Maya, and he should also be compassionate to all others suffer in those clutches. The activities of the Krishna consciousness movement are meant not only for oneself, but for others also. This is the perfection of Krishna consciousness. One who is interested in his own salvation is not as advanced in Krishna consciousness as one who feels compassion for others and who therefore propagates the Krishna consciousness movement. Such an advanced devotee will never fall down, for Krishna will give him special protection. That is the sum and substance of the Krishna consciousness movement. Everyone is like a play toy in the hands of the illusory energy and is acting as she moves him. One should come to Krishna consciousness to release oneself and also to release others. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Shcha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tata Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham karoti vachalam pungum langayate girim Yat kripata maham vande Shri Guru Dinataranam. The mercy of the Master, a blind man can see the stars, a lame man can cross the mountains, and dumb man can speak eloquently. I therefore offer my respectful obeisance to the Santo Lotus to the most spiritual master. So the translation again. Because of identifying oneself with the body, one is subjected to desires for sense gratification, and thus one engages in many different types of pious and impious actions. This is what constitutes material bondage. Now, I shall disentangle myself from my material bondage, which has been caused by the Supreme Personality of God's illusory energy in the form of a woman. Being a most fallen soul, I was victimized by the illusory energy and have become like a dancing dog led around by a woman's hand. Now, I shall give up all lusty desires and free myself from this illusion. I shall become a merciful, well-wishing friend to all living entities and always absorb myself in Krishna consciousness. To give a little bit of background to this story. So Ajamil, a Brahmana, priest, and he got married, had a very wonderful wife. I can't remember whether he had any children. Very nice parents coming from like a very nice background, and he was very nicely and sincerely engaged in devotional service, doing various religious activities. And then, and one day, he saw these two people like very kind of, we could say, inappropriately um, in a public place, kind of kissing and hugging and engaged in that kind of activity. It was actually a prostitute with, some man engaged in this activity. And actually, it hasn't. There was times when he had never seen anything like that in his life, and he became that kind of image entered his head and played again and again and again, and he couldn't get out of his head basically that image. Of course, nowadays this is happening every day in the town, but in those days, that was something that he never seen before. He went through his all teenage and adult, or they got married, but he hasn't seen this kind of public display of engaging in kind of this kind of activity, embracing and hugging and kissing with prostitutes. So that really kind of affected him, that he couldn't get this out of his head, and he basically then kind of hired that lady in his for his house to kind of help with the household, and then started kind of affair with her, and then eventually becomes so captivated by that situation that he kind of divorced, thrown out, separated from his wife, and kind of married that prostitute, and in order to maintain the whole situation, he started to steal, he started to commit various types of criminal activity, kind of beg, borrow, steal type of thing, and he had a number of children with that prostitute, and etc. And then completely forgotten his kind of spiritual background, spiritual life, completely thrown out of the wind, basically, and got completely carried away by that situation. And then later, when he was 88 years old, he had a 2 years old son, Narayan, and then he was on his deathbed. And in his deathbed, basically, there is this concept of lower planetary systems, as described in the Vedic literature, where people go when they do very bad karma. In the Christian tradition, is called hell. in the Vedic tradition, it's called Naraka. So it's described like this, like planetary systems, higher planetary systems is considered heavenly planets, mid planetary systems where we live, and lower planetary systems where people go to suffer their bad karma. And so these representatives came from the lower planetary systems called Yamadutas to take him away. And he got very scared, and then he called his son's name Narayan. And because Narayan is the name of God, uh, he actually received immense benefit, although he performed a lot of bad karma, and he was supposed to go to lower planetary systems to suffer the karma. Of course, the good news is after you suffer your bad karma, you come back. So there is no such a concept of suffering forever. As soon as you suffered your bad karma, you come back to this earthly plane. So it's very significant realm where we build up our karma. If we have a good karma, we go up, upper planetary systems. If we do bad karma, or very bad karma, we go down. And earthly plane is where we accrue our karma. And also, it is a realm from where we can go to the spiritual world and we don't come back again. So that's a very, very significant point that we come to a little bit later. So because he called Narayan, then the representatives of higher realms of spiritual world appeared there, and they stopped those guys. They're not very nice looking guys. Stopped them and said, "No, you cannot take away." And there was a little exchange between them, backwards and forward, discussing, what is the situation, what happened there, and basically, what saved this gentleman Ajamil is because he chanted the holy name of the Lord. So he becomes so quickly and powerfully purified. And of course, it wasn't just that he was chanting at the time of death, but because for 2 years, since he called his son Narayan, he was chanting Narayan, Narayan, come here, Narayan, stop crying, Narayan, this and that. And then it's gonna build it up. And after a couple of years, at the time of death, he chanted the name of Narayan, and that saved him from going down. And then those Vishnu Dutas, they're called representatives of higher realm of Vaikuntha. They gave him another chance now to perfect his life. So in this standard translation may sound a little bit intense, but this is, after he realized the whole situation happened, then he traced back in his life, obviously, where he got caught up with this, attraction to prostitute, that kind of really spoiled his whole spiritual journey. And then is saying, that I was victimized and became a dancing dog in a form of a woman, as it described here. So what is it? What is it actually that makes a dog dance? It is, and I can say, it's a bone. Yes. What makes the dog dance is a bone. I don't know if you've ever seen, or a bone or other things people have, and the dog is up and down, up and down. And when they train the dogs, they also, like throw the ball, and then the dog brings back the ball. Um, they also like they give a little sweetie when the dog is good. When it's jumping, when it does what you want, then give the dog a sweetie, and then eventually the dog starts to dance because he knows he's going to get a sweet. So for this Ajamil, that bone was, this attraction, because he had the, and this is a very important point. He was married before, and everything was very nice and proper, but he had this, he got carried away by the material attraction. So this attachment is what we are speaking about, and attachments comes in various types of illusory forms, and also attachment can come in a spiritual way. So Krishna consciousness, some traditions, they say you have to get rid of attachment altogether, because look what happens. This person is completely fall down from the spiritual path by attraction to prostitute, and therefore we should stop attachment altogether and just meditate and kind of stop all desires. This is not a part of Krishna consciousness, because we recognize that the nature of living entity is to desire. You cannot get rid of desire. And the nature of desire is that you become attached as well to the things of attraction. But the point is to transfer your attraction from material thing to the spiritual thing, to spiritual objects, from material objects. So, like for example, his marriage that he had, it was done in a spiritual way to begin with, and that was conducive and helpful to spiritual life. But when he became attracted and obsessed about this prostitute, it threw all his spiritual life out of the window. So you have to think as well in our own life, what is your bone? What is the bone that makes you dance, and jump up and down? We have various types of attachment, and the challenge and of course this attraction that is there between man and women. So the man can become a dancing dog as well because of that attachment, and vice versa. You can see these things happen. These things can happen, and and there is a certain power that male and female have over each other's mind. But the culture means not to abuse this power. Well, you recognize there is this power to attract, each other, but you not abuse it, but use it in a proper way. And also, there is a different degrees and levels of attraction. There is a physical attraction, and as we know, physical things, they come and go. They become old. The attraction is there, and then it fades away with the time, and etc. is not something where we can permanently put our energy into that kind of attraction. But there is also qualities of character. This is very much emphasized in the Vedic system. Is actually qualities of character, purity. There's actually a number of them mentioned: peacefulness, friendliness, mercifulness, self-realization. He is letting go his material attraction, but is not going into the void, into nothingness. Is going to the spiritual, embracing the spiritual, aspect. So letting go the material aspect, the material attraction, material, physical, etc. That's what he got carried away. These images that he had in front of him, you capture him, and he threw his spiritual life out of the window. However, now he's realizing the situation and is embracing now the spiritual qualities: mercifulness, kindness, self-realization. So these are very beautiful, attractive qualities for a self-realized person. So looking beyond the physical attraction and looking into the spiritual qualities, and in a spiritual sense, people, they come together to help each other to grow spiritually, because physical attraction gonna fade away. The emotional things are there. But there's also, if you are not spiritual, if you're not cultivating God consciousness, there's unbelievable amount of negative emotions that are there in the relationships. In fact, the worst type of suffering practically in the material world is, when people become attached to each other and then they hurt each other. It's one of the worst type miseries in material world. If there is no spirituality, there's practically no way to work it out. It's just often, it breaks down, and various types of divorce or so things, going on. It happens all the time. So this material, way of building a relationship, it's in a long term, it doesn't work. And even if it does work, and especially in Kali Yuga, because people don't know how to act in a mode of goodness. Mode of goodness, there is forgiveness, there is tolerance, there is peacefulness, there is, all those wonderful things. There's self-realization, there's understanding that certain things come as a result of karma, and etc. And so this, when these things are there, it's a lot easier, to have relationship, whether it's, friends or family, or, in this purport, men and women. So, but because there is no spiritual cultivation and culture, then the way people treat each other is like a very passionate. There's angry, there is anger, there's very intense attachment on a bodily platform. Um, and that creates a lot of misery, frustration, and there's so much breakdowns in that situation. So how to make that transition is very, very important. We are being born and grow up in this material culture. It's very, very strong in our, attachment on a physical platform. We just kind of attracted whatever we see, that images enter us, and we just immediately kind of jump into that attraction. So one very, very important thing, and then as it says here in translation, because of identifying oneself with the body, one is subjected to desires for self-gratification. So the way to disentangle oneself is to upgrade the concept of identity. It's one of the most fundamental points in life, actually, is to find your proper identity of who you are, because it makes that identity, makes the foundation of your existence, of how you're going to act. So for example, if you identify as a football fan in Glasgow, if you are, for example, Go Rangers fan, then you're gonna get rid of anything and everything that is green in your house. I mean, if you're really, really into it, you get rid all the green stuff, and whoever is green, you feel a bit kind of reluctant, resistant, some fans actually they break the green. These are in traffic lights. This is the green traffic light. Some fans even break that because they can't handle it. So Shishiko Denitai Maya Pushashiki. Yeah. So there is like so many ways how people identify themselves. Or if you identify as a communist, then there's the whole thing will come as a package. Okay, religion is the opium for the masses. Let's the everything should belong to the state. These kind of things. Or you're capitalist, let's make as much profit as possible. Like I was studying business at university, and the first thing I learned in university, it says the goal of the business is to maximize the profit. I just couldn't understand, why do you want to maximize the profit? Why is not enough for you, a certain amount of profit, and maybe the rest of it you give for charity or help the people, or etc. Why do you want to maximize it? So just couldn't understand, but later I understood, because of the greed, you want more and more and more. But they put you in the books. The goal is to maximize the profit. To see how powerful and important is identity, because it'll set almost your entire destination, and that's including like defining in so many ways. It sets us in a certain kind of almost destination. So if you identify as a body, I am this body. So then you gonna think how I can gonna give pleasure to this body, how I can gratify the senses. We have various things, eyes, tongues, ears, and etc. And that becomes, if because of that identification, you get all this package, you get all the values. Okay, so the goal of life is to enjoy the senses to the max. And that sets almost your whole destiny for the rest of your life, because of how you identified yourself. So therefore, as you come, through the door of Krishna consciousness movement, temples or whichever program, one of the first things that we teach people is to find their ultimate identity, which is not this body. And people who try to focus on disgratifying their body, we can see that this entire civilization, the current civilization that is promoting the bodily values, has completely failed. Has completely failed to bring happiness to the people. You judge by the civilization by the result of their activities. But that gets, and is the civilization, does it make people happy? Does it make, I would very confidently can say that it didn't bring happiness. In fact, is more and more people are very unhappy, mentally disturbed, and there is never-ending problems that arise from this bodily identification. Even when we look at the wars, for example, what war means? It means this is my country, this is your territory, this is my things that I want to get, and I want to expand it. I want to expand my influence. I want to expand physically. I mean, very gross level is just invade someone and claim now this is my territory. But on more subtle level, there's like a political and economical power and etc. And it's all coming from bodily concept. This is me. This is my country. This is my influence, and I want to expand more and more of my influence and my ego. All this from racism, and is coming from the bodily concept of life. You take practically any modern problem, you will find that the root cause of it is the bodily concept of life. I am in this body, and this is my values coming with the body, and I want to expand more and more, my influence. So therefore, we have to change this identification, and as soon as you get this in the beginning theoretical realization, and then later a practical realization that you're not this body and a spirit soul, then everything changes in life. And you have to understand, if I am soul, if I'm not this body, if I'm spirit that gives the life to the body, what is it actually is my duty? What's gonna give happiness to the soul? And how how I can act as a soul, how I can function in this world as a soul, and attain the goal of happiness. So the goal remains the same, but with the better understand your identity, your whole activities can change. So therefore, spiritual life, it means to transition from the bodily identity into spiritual identity. There is a process, there is an activity, and then we become free from this victimization of various material attachments, because with the desires of your identity, when you interact with the objects of your gratification, you become attached. But if you shift your identity and cultivate that I am spirit soul, and then you interact in a spiritual way, then your attachments that you develop become spiritual. They become attachments that uplift you instead of the attachments that degrade you and make you dancing dog in the hands of material energy. And technically speaking, that is material existence, is just the pulling of different types of attachments to different directions on the bodily platform. Whatever the tongue is dictating, whatever the ears, eyes and the nose is dictating, or genitals, is just like pushing, dragging to that direction of attachment. And so whatever the bone is there in the material world, that's technically speaking what's going on in material existence, is the dancing to whichever attachment you are. We are jumping to get that next thing, whatever it could be. Whether it's a phone, there's a new partner, new some sort of fashion or something, just chasing that, and it just makes us dance. It makes us dance. But there is actually dancing. We don't want to give it up dancing. There is a dancing to the source of love. We do dance in the Krishna consciousness. So it's not about giving up dancing and not give up attachment, but transferring that attachment to Krishna. Then we can dance gracefully for Krishna's pleasure. Then we can dance in a way that is not like this guy, you saw and you got completely degraded. You saw, people kissing and hugging and etc. And you completely lost it and become attracted. But actually, there's this graceful dancing that is uplifting, elevating your consciousness, purifying your heart. This is singing to, you can sing Hare Krishna Mahamantra that will purify you. So these are the things that will slowly but surely help you to change and realize practically. We're not just speaking about, like a theoretically here about the soul and our identity being the soul. Prabhupada said, a number of times, very emphatically, he said, please believe me when I tell you this. You are not this body, spirit, soul. And of course, you have to hear from him, get in order to get, this very powerful message. It comes with a lot more potency. The more realization, the full realization is there. When we hear that, we realize and we can start acting on this platform. In the beginning, we may try to do it theoretically, accept this principle. Okay, I've tried, I tried to act on my bodily identity. You have to first ask this question: and am I happy? Did I find happiness on that physical bodily level? And if answer is no or maybe, then we can look. Okay, there is this proposition, a proposal. Let me really try to act on a spiritual platform. And the soul is the part and parcel of Krishna. And the nature and the essence of the soul, what gives happiness to the soul, is to serve and love Krishna. And most first and most fundamental service is to chant, his holy name. And then that spiritual practice and the spiritual development starts developing. We start going forward, and that theoretical realization slowly, as you start experiencing happiness on the level when you perform spiritual activity, when you start to act in a way how the soul acts. We starting to lose our material identification and this illusion that I am this body. And the more we act in a spiritual way, the more we experience satisfaction and spiritual connection and relationship with Krishna. And then it becomes a realization. So first there is an understanding, it's called sambandha. Then there is a practice, it's called abhideya. And then the goal means prayojana. When you reach a certain type of goal, is prayojana. So first you theoretically understand and you practice, and then realization comes: I am not this body, I am spirit soul. And actually the greatest happiness, the greatest goal in life is to act within that capacity. So this is what our message for today. And there is a few, of course, other things that can be helpful for transitioning to the spiritual understanding. And we need some sort of um, mentorship. We need also study philosophy, because if this body identification is so strong, we forget. The attachment makes you forget. When you're very much attached to something, and it draws you, and it makes you forget of what is the of real value. So therefore, hearing every day, studying every day, that the spiritual philosophy, it helps and reminds us to stay on a track and stay on this spiritual path. And therefore also there is a certain culture, like when the new person enters the spiritual environment, there's a certain culture in the Vedic system that is helping you to not form unnecessary attachments that could stray you from the path. So there is like a lot of things, that may sound, look even like a very, very strange, when you come and look like, this is weird. This look like, is this some sort of objectification? Is this some sort of a discrimination or something? No, this is to create a very, very as safe environment as possible, so that we don't form unnecessary attachment that is gonna become a distraction. And of course, this attraction, is there, but it's how to express it in a spiritual way, and how to make it work. It's required that there is a third partner. You're speaking about relation to Krishna. If the Krishna is the goal, then the partnership is there to help, to grow spiritually and go back to Krishna. And some people may not need this, because they remain as monks. That's also possible. Uh, but if you need to form a relationship, then how to do that in a way that is not detrimental to spiritual life. So therefore, there's a lot of culture required and understanding, and therefore it's so important actually before doing that is to really uh, grow spiritually. That's like, for example, we have this brahmacharya training and brahmacharini training. There's a training or ashram training, how to control your senses, how to control your mind, how to see others as a soul rather than the body, how to develop spiritual qualities, as we speak here, friendliness, peacefulness, mercifulness, self-realization. Because if not, it's just not gonna work. If you're not spiritually cultivating the relationship, is just not gonna work. It's gonna be a lot of problems in due course of time. On the bodily platform, the relationship is called kama, it's called lust. There's a lot of selfishness involved. When the desire is not fulfilled, it's so much anger, frustration, and etc. comes out of that. So therefore, it's so important to get the training, very proper spirit training, and also when you have this deep satisfaction and fulfillment and happiness, then you won't get carried away by what happened to Ajmil, by externals. You just got carried away. And therefore, very much before they get into serious relationship, get a proper training in your Krishna consciousness, become spiritually strong, develop spiritual qualities and values, and etc. Then these things is gonna work. Otherwise, it's gonna be just another struggle. So, are there any questions or comments on these points or challenges? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare
Thank you. I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit more about the process of changing our material perception to a spiritual perception.
Thank you. The classical analogy that we use, and one of them is like if person in amnesia is forgetful, because sometimes there is some really serious crash or something that happens, it shakes people existence so much, then and it's like almost like a mental reaction is to almost like erase something that caused you a lot of pain. And people do that in a small way as well. If there is some hurt somebody had, there's a tendency, instead of kind of addressing it and working out, it's just like almost like erase it out of your consciousness. And so later on it may come up in some funny ways. So when there is this some massive shock and some fear or something's consciousness just erases the whole situation together with all memories and etc. And people go into the state of amnesia and forget what is their name, where they are. Often they still can speak, but there is some part of the brain or something that responsible for memory, and that just like gets ejected. So one of the methods is to bring a person to the places where you used to like to do. Say like, so if a person was a Rangers fan, you may take them to the football match of Rangers. Sorry for this mundane example. Or if you used to like to go to the forest or something, you take to the forest. And also if you like to play basketball, throw the ball, and a person starts like a banging. Oh my God, actually I like basketball. So things like that, you start to do the activities, and the memory can just start coming back. So in the same way, actually, we are originally Krishna conscious, is not a foreign thing for us. We are actually spirit soul. So when we engage again very seriously in that spiritual activity, the memory starts awakening. And some people even feel, actually, I almost like subconsciously in our guts, you start to feel, actually this is really true. Even if it can be, some things can be very challenging, but like on a deeper level you may think, my God, this really makes sense. And some people may think, actually almost like I actually almost like knew this on some level, some concept that but it's just starting to kind of, I don't know, sometimes people realize a few things here and there, but when they come to the spiritual culture, it's like a full picture is given. So certain things is like subconsciously in our heart. And when we start exposing ourselves to spiritual practices, to chanting, reading, studying, is the whole thing starting to awakening. And eventually we realize our spiritual identity, not just a spirit soul, but we have identity in a spiritual world. So in a culmination of that development, we reach that platform. But it requires a little bit of patience and requires some enthusiasm and requires to hear this philosophy every day and practice it very seriously. So I'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande, Haribo. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.